We're going to need a long shanked hook like this Daiichi 1270. However, I am putting a barbless firehole sticks number 718 in my vise. Start your thread a hook eye length or two back from the eye of the hook, and bring your thread all the way down to the back of the hook. Now we will need some deer hair, and there's a wide variety of hair on the market. You have different lengths, thicknesses, and colors all available. All three of these can be used for stimulators. On the left here I have a normal deer hair, one that you'd use for collars or spinning. Then there's coastal deer hair, which is commonly used on this fly. Next is a hair specified for stimulators, but it's kind of hard to find. Last is comparadun hair. It's the finest and most even of the hair. But whichever hair you use, clip off a very small amount of it. 20 to 30 or so fibers is good. Clip it off close at the base, and then pinch the tips tightly. Next, we need to brush out the underfur, and this 99-cent fine-tooth Walmart comb works just fine. And then we need to stack this to align the tips. We are using a very small amount, so this small hair stacker works great. As you can see, the tips are aligned now. Pull them out of the stacker and stroke out any remaining underfur. Measure out about a hook gap for the tail, and then tie that in at the back of the hook. A pinch wrap works really good for this. After secured tightly, with a few tight wraps, then proceed to make your way up the hook shank, trying to keep the deer hair aligned on top of the hook as best as possible. And I'm sure you can do a whole lot better than I did here. I mean, it didn't really help that I had a camera between me and the fly. So once you make your way about 2/3 up the hook shank, then stop and trim off the excess hair. We will now clean all this up with some tight wraps, making sure that the hair is fully covered by the thread. Covering the hook shank like this with hollow deer hair helps add to the floatability of this fly. Next, tie in some small sized wire on the side of the fly facing you all the way down to the start of the tail. Tying it in on the side helps keep the wire from messing with the tail when wrapped. Now we need some dubbing. This is orange microfine dubbing. However, any dubbing you want to use will work. A common dubbing for this fly is Hairline's rabbit dubbing. Dub on a thin but long noodle that has a taper to it. Then begin to wrap up the hook shank with your noodle, trying to make a nice and pronounced taper up to about the 2/3 mark. Next, we need some dry fly hackle, and this number 3 neck from Metz will work well. Find a feather that matches your hook gap. I have a size 16 hook, so I'm looking for a 16 feather. If you don't have one of these handy tools, just wrapping the feather around your hook to measure it will work fine as well. But you can see how handy this tool is. The feather tips come out to about the 16 line on this gauge, so I know it's the right size. Now we will need to strip off the fibers where the feather stem is thick. It's hard to see here, but the stem goes from thick and stiff to thin and flexible. Now we won't need all that stem, so clip off the bottom part. Now with the top, shiny side of the feather facing you, strip off a few fibers to the right side of the feather, and this will help you start your wraps aligned correctly. Now tie the feather in angling outward, with the sides stripped off more facing up. Make 2 tight wraps over the feather, and then make 2 tight wraps going over the other way, forming an X over the feather. Then make 2 very tight wraps in front of the feather to lock it down tight. This technique ties the feather in perpendicular to the hook shank, like so. Of course, trim off the waist stem close. Then grab the tip of the feather with some hackle pliers, and proceed to wrap the hackle down the hook shank, making open spiral wraps. Try to get these wraps as even as possible, as this will add a bit of ribbing on the fly. Now you can see how tying the feather in perpendicular this way helps to align those hackle fibers and get them facing outward. Once you reach the rear of the fly, grab the wire and wrap over the hackle, holding the hackle at a 60-degree angle. This will help keep from trapping any hackle fibers. Then proceed to wrap your wire up through the hackle, going the opposite direction. This will put multiple points of pressure on the stem of the hackle and help keep it in place. Also, wiggling the wire as you go up helps keep from trapping any of the hackle fibers. Once you wrap all the way through the hackle, then capture the wire with a few tight wraps and helicopter the wire off. And of course, trim off the excess feather. Pull all the hackle rearward and make a few tight wraps just behind the hackle. Although some people don't do this step, I find cutting the top of the hackle at an angle helps with laying the deer hair wing down properly. Okay, let's cut some more deer hair. This time we need quite a bit more hair. I personally like my wings bushy and thick. Prepare the fur like before, by brushing and stacking. This time, however, I'm using a larger stacker, as this selection is too large to fit in my small stacker. Once the hair is prepared, then measure the wing to extend just shy of the end of the tail. Transfer that measurement to the other hand, and then make a few wraps on the hair, getting tighter with each wrap. Also, making 2 wraps through the hair as well will help keep the wing from spinning on the hook. Then cut off the waist hair close, without snipping your thread, and make any extra cuts needed to remove any long pieces that would hang over the eye. Now clean up the head section with some wraps, ensuring to lay down all the deer hair cleanly. Also, make a bit of a tapered head here, like a ramp down to the eye. Prepare another hackle feather in the same way as before, and I'm actually going to use grizzly on this one. Then tie it in so the shiny side is towards you, and the extra stripped fiber is facing up. Dub on some more dubbing. I actually changed to a tan dubbing here. Make your noodle long and thin again. And just cover the head with your dubbing, but try to keep that taper angle. Then proceed to palmer your hackle down, but try to make at least 4 to 5 wraps. The more wraps you make, the higher this will float. And then capture the hackle by holding it out at an angle, and try to get your thread through the hackle fibers and capture the bare stem without trapping any fibers. Do your best, it's really not easy to do. Then pull everything rearward and make a few wraps back on top of the hackle. Snip off the excess hackle close, and then use your hackle pliers to break off any trapped hackle. Now it's really hard to cement the head of these flies with all the hackle on the way, so I like painting on some head cement before whip finishing the fly. Well, there we have it, a Stimulator. This is a very high floating, super buoyant fly. I believe it was created as a stonefly imitation, but it can work well as a hopper or even a really large caddis imitator. So I want to remind you that the list of materials are in the description section of this video, but you might have to click the show more and expand the section to view. I've also provided links to these materials with the best prices I could find online. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please share with your friends and hit that like button. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.